Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Live from Our Living Room. I'm your host Sarah Knopp. I'm so glad that you've come to join us for another episode. I hope you're staying warm. I hope you're all rugged up at home. I certainly have my Ugg boots on this evening. It's a cold one in Melbourne. Tonight I am joined by the amazing Tom and Phoebe from Double Creative, and we're going to be chatting about the visual identity of our latest project, Home Part 1. So welcome Tom and Phoebe. Hey!
Thanks, Sarah.
Welcome guys, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing good.
Yeah, really good. Phoebe's pretty cold. She's born in Byron Bay, so she's just hasn't
She
I
hasn't
just
got
feel
up with the Melbourne weather. So
yeah,
she hasn't got Melbourne winters yet.
I'm pretty much always in a puffer jacket or like multiple pairs of socks. Like I wear probably 2 pairs of socks most days. Just you don't know. You just don't know in Melbourne. It's hectic.
Yeah, you've got to do what you got to do. Stay warm. Now, guys, you are not just a husband and wife, you are also business partners running Double Creative, which is a creative studio based in Melbourne. Can you tell us, how did you get started with Double Creative?
Yeah, totally.
You've got a great memory. Do you want to kick us off?
I knew we would do that. Look, how we got started, it felt like it was very supernatural, as well as something that we'd had on our hearts for such a long time. I think both of us are very creative. Like we were both quite musical growing up. We both had a background in art and illustration. So that's kind of where my design started, was just hand painting, usually calligraphy or that kind of thing. So I'd started from that space, and Tom was similar, just drawing and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then we got married 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. And we were I was studying and Tom was working, you were working full-time. You got a full-time design job.
In the city,
In the city. And so we moved from the peninsula because Tom's originally from there. We got married down here and lived down here for a bit. Moved up towards the city, and literally after a month of living there, Tom's job suddenly finished. And we'd been married for 4 months, and I was at uni, and we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And like, obviously being at uni, I wasn't really working much. I think I had part-time work at Sports Girl or something. Yeah. And
so what better time to start a business?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just something about when God puts something on your heart. It's like, yeah, this is the right time, and it doesn't feel right, but we've got a sense of peace around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think as well, it brought some purpose to finishing up the design job and going, what are we going to do? Are we going to step out on the water and do something?
Yeah.
And I think that was our chance to just go, God, we're completely trusting you right now, and jump out and pretty much struggle for the first year or so of doing it. But then, because I think we felt like the grace and favor was on it to do it, but it didn't mean that it was going to be a breeze. It was actually really hard, but God's hand was in it. His promise was just to bless us every week. Like God would just come in every week and bless us over and over. So it was a good foundation to set for the business to actually do it in that place. So
every job felt like a miracle, and what was amazing as well was that the job finished for Tom, and then literally within a couple of days he randomly had an old contact who he'd done some work for contact him and just be like, hey, I need some design work. And ever since that day we've had a job, whether it was one or whether we were juggling multiple projects. Now it's like we never didn't have no work,
have nothing.
And like we hadn't marketed or advertised or anything. We didn't say we were doing our own thing. Like it was just God started it, and we just had to kind of jump in and go, cool, now we're doing it too. Like
it was just one little thing to do, and that was enough to go, I can be faithful with the one little thing that God's put in front of us.
Yeah, that was the confirmation.
Yeah,
amazing. So now that you have been in full swing as a business for a little while, how do you go about working together in the business?
Really well, I would say. I think we think similarly, and the way that we that we work. We don't just design for aesthetic's sake. We have a lot of meaning and purpose behind what we do and why we do it. And I think when we can connect with the vision of the project or our vision as Double Creative, we can kind of work off something, work from somewhere. And so when it comes to the everyday stuff, we know why we're doing it. It's not just like, oh, you do that task because that's the crap task. It's like we're doing it together because we've got a collective vision. So, and I think that's the same in our marriage as well. We have a vision in our marriage of why we're together. What are we doing in the context of the bigger picture of what God's got for us and of our church and our community and family and that sort of thing. So I think that makes it easy to then roll into the everyday and go, okay, what am I doing today? Bring context and the bigger picture to every day. But
it is an amazing collaborative process, and you can tell when we're both not on the same page, when we go, oh, hang on a second, like this, what is the vision? And I think that's a big part of why we do what we do, because for those who don't know, like Double Creative is a graphic design studio, but we focus on branding. And something we do before that is strategy, and that's where we really develop the why and the heart and the values and the vision and the audience. And we do a lot of that process in collaboration with our clients, but also collaboration together, because then when we go into the visuals, we are on the same page, and it is like, I can go, okay, cool, I know why I'm doing this project. It's not just to get the project done. It's to be like, okay, I want to help our people, our clients, ourselves grow and impact the world, basically. And I think that's something beautiful that design does, and something that we get to do together. And so it is like, sometimes we have to pull ourselves back and go, cool, what is the vision again? And sometimes we go, wow, working together is hard today because we're not in line. And so it's just coming back to that place and knowing when we need to recalibrate, I guess.
Yeah.
And if like,
it's great to have that anchor point that you can keep coming back to that you've established from the start.
Yeah. I think like, regardless of who you're working with in a business context, you need to be connected. And so I think that's where it's like, yes, you have to be compatible to work together as a couple. It's just kind of, I guess, the way it is. But as well, regardless of whether it's your partner or it's a business partner, you have to be connected. So I think speaking particularly vulnerably as well, if we're off in our relationship, we can tell. And I think that's a good thing, because it means that we're usually okay or usually well. But when we're not doing good, it's like taking a moment and going, okay, why are we off? And is it us? Is it something in the business? Is it something personally? And just having that self-awareness is really important to check in every now and again, and when you need to.
Yeah. And I think practically, in terms of how we run a project together, like, we work very collaboratively, but then sometimes like Tom might lead a project or I might lead a project, and it's not that they it might be that they have a slightly different flavor that suits one of us better, but we still kind of do the work together. It's just we kind of know who's maybe being the touch point with the client, or who's being the almost the lead role on that project. So I think that's been a good way for us to, especially because Tom kind of started while I was still at uni, and I was working some days, but he kind of had to do those like real groundwork things. That's been a really good thing now that we're both full time, is going, okay, you kind of lead this project, I kind of lead that project. And then we cross over and work on each other's things, and that's really fun too.
Yeah, that's great. So tonight we're going to be talking about one of your more recent projects, which was working alongside Anna and Jared and Alana on the visual identity of our recent project, Home Part 1. So I just want to remind the audience at this point, this is an invitation to join in our conversation. So make sure if you've got any questions for Tom and Phoebe, you pop it in the comment section on Facebook, and we'll make sure that we come back and answer all those questions at some point during the conversation. So, Tom and Phoebe, can you tell us a bit about Home Part 1? You are part of the Stairway family. You are both really important members of our Stairway music team. How did you go about sort of switching your focus for this to not be so much a team member, but having the team as your clients for this project?
Really interesting. I think we work with a lot of people that we are connected with already. So it's not a new thing for us to be working from a place of relationship within the context of a professional environment as well as just the personal environment. So I think we're constantly walking that line of friend or connection or someone that we've established a relationship. And I think we base a lot of what we do off the people behind the businesses and the brands that people run. So to know someone and to know what makes them who they are and to connect with them on that level helps us to kind of understand where they're coming from and how to encapsulate that heart and tell it in a way that that resonates with them, because as much as it has to resonate with some particular audience, I think it has to resonate with them and feel like it captures a sense of who they are. Yeah. So I think it actually is a benefit working with people that we know and love.
It is different when you go from serving somewhere though to then working in a different capacity. Like when they become a client, that is a really different I guess move. But as Tom said, like, we obviously know Anna and Jared and Joel and the team and Alani really well, and it helps us to go, cool, we can really join the heart of what you're doing because we really know you, and there's a trust there already, which is a really beautiful thing. I think that feels like it.
Yeah, so you touched on there, getting to understand the heart of the project. So at the point at which you guys joined in on Home Part 1, a lot of things had been formed, including the music. So what was your approach to just building upon what had already been created and honouring the essence and the heart of the music and the visuals that had already been created?
Yeah. I think the heart was established and it was really beautiful. It was about a journey of returning home, and I think what we wanted to come alongside the team and sort of do is to tell that story in a way that was genuine to the heart of the project. So it was a lot about telling the story and how can we tell this story in a way that honours the story that is in their hearts, but also tells it in a way that people can connect with, especially on a platform, on a social media platform. Going, how can we tell this in a way that makes people want to, or makes people feel like they're drawn into it, and they're drawn in and invited into it because it is the idea of home. Yeah. And so how can we make people feel like that? Because we deal with although, like, practically speaking, we deal with design, but we also are thinking a lot of the time and base a lot of our ideas and the output of what we do around people's perceptions, people's ideas, people's experience of what they're engaging with. So, but for people to be scrolling social media and then to actually take the time to stop and read something, they have to be drawn into it, and I think we tried to tell that story as best we could.
Yeah, and I think taking the sound and doing that, like for us, it was probably like taking any element that someone comes to us with. So often people will come with a little idea or their business idea or whatever it is. They come with that, and we get to decode that and go, cool, how can we take your sound or your business idea or whatever it is and go, here's your audience over here, let's like connect the two, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so for sure.
Doing that with sound is a really fun thing because everyone's interpretation is different. The beauty of this project was we had sound, we had photography, we had
Lani's design
of the album cover, And then we had I don't think we had even seen the video yet. And so we were able to, kind of marry all of those elements. And that was a really beautiful thing to do. And having the sound gave us it almost gives your imagination permission to run, which is really fun too, because you're not seeing it, but you're hearing it, and you know, it touches a different part of you. So I really love having sound as a part of a project. And there's been a couple other musicians we've worked with doing this, where we hear their sound and then create visuals out of that. And it's really fun, because it is really different to just seeing a picture or a reference or something, you know?
Yeah, I imagine having music as part of the brief is quite a unique way to be briefed by your client.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really fun.
Awesome. You talked a little bit about the social media campaign that you worked on for this, and obviously the the environment that we're releasing this project in is not like anything we've ever done before, because people are home so much more and not with each other like they usually are. So how did you approach that social media campaign in order to give people that sense that they were part of our community and part of what we were doing, even though we have to be physically separate?
Yeah, totally. I think something that Tom said earlier about the way we ran the campaign, having it as a journal that you read on the story, where usually you would flick past real quick, or I don't know, you know, you see a sponsored ad or whatever it is, and you're just not really stopping and taking time.
Scrolling,
just mindlessly scrolling. And there's something about being forced to do it differently that I really love about this campaign. Is like, I'm stopping and I'm taking a moment to take in what is being shared. And I think I think this time is beautiful in the fact that you have a choice. Like you go, okay, I'm not just consuming, I'm actually stopping and reading, and it's a choice that I have to make to take part as well. And so it was balancing this idea of like, okay, I want to invite people in as much as possible, but the reality is they have a choice to read it and to stop and be a part of it as well. And so I do love that it's unusual and it's unconventional to do it this way. And taking the idea of home and calling it Stories from Home, and we're actually sharing the stories of how the songs have been written and the devotionals behind them, and the different artists doing it at home and stuff, and then putting that on the stories in Instagram. I love that kind of weird correlation, or whatever it's, I don't know, what would you call that? Like that weird dynamic, I guess, of like, you know, we're telling a story using stories, and it's different, and it's
but part of that is that you need to treat it in a way that looks inviting as well. And Phoebe did a lot of the designs on this, and they look beautiful. And there was a few strategic things in there to make it feel like it was almost like an editorial style or like a scrapbook style, kind of a hybrid of both. And some small things that we did was having like the little what we call running headers and running footers. So there's a little small text at the top and the small text down the bottom that sort of frames the block of text that you read in the middle, and that gives you a sense of knowing where you are, like you would when you're flicking through a magazine or you're browsing a website. And just those little things that kind of make it, along with the generous margins around the edges that make it feel like it draws you in, and like it's an important piece of text to read. And so those little considerations, I guess, are what makes it feel like that.
Yeah. And then, you know, adding the colours that we brought in and the flow of the way the information came out. So you had your devotional to start with, and your piece with the artist at home, and then the expression, and you know, the way that the pieces were released as well, like continuing to tell that story, I think is you almost wanted to read the next thing, because it's like, oh, like what's the next part? Like it really guides you. And that was a massive part of it, was just trying to guide people in this process. So it did feel like we could be together when we weren't together. And it was beautiful to watch people who shared their creative pieces and shared their heart, and people commenting and celebrating those people as well. Like I think that was another beautiful part of doing it online, is that you really get a chance to go, that was amazing, and tell the person. And that, you know, like, it can be hard when you're in an event to be able to do that, and in this setting you were able to do that, so that was really cool.
I personally was blown away by the way that everything came together, because we are a team and we are a community that's used to meeting in one place, and we're great at workshopping things and working things out as a team. So to have to create things in silo, or just have that online communication, but then to still be able to kind of bring everything together and tell a unified story, I was blown away by how it all came together.
Totally. Yeah, totally. It was really amazing. And I think that's such a testimony of Anna and Jolie and Alani and Jared, the way that they communicate their heart, and the way they share vision is so powerful. So I think the way that the vision was shared with us, it was really easy to take part, you know, like it was like, cool, like there was plenty of permission to run, but there was also plenty of vision to run with. And that was such an important part of being on any team and being a part of any project, is like, if I can, like we were saying earlier, if I can join my heart to that vision and I can run with you, then like it's going to be amazing. And I think that is, it's awesome that we have a team that value that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe we can just go back to a bit of the visuals, because I know you've talked a bit about some of the design choices that you made when you were pulling it together, but I personally just thought the photography and the imagery that was selected and the colour palette that was selected was so beautiful and really captured the essence of home, that warmth and welcoming kind of environment. So how did you go about making those kind of choices?
Yeah, totally.
I think you chose some of the photography, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, Danielle's photos, so she had done the photography, and that was so stunning to work with. And then Renee Johnston had done all the photos of the actual night. And it was just like what we were saying before, that vision was so strong that both of those really fit well together. So I originally had that, I used that olive green for most of it because it felt really warm, but having a darker tone with the white text is easier to read on screen. So I wanted to keep like a warm green, but like a deep color, but have it feel warm still, I guess, and communicate that home thing. And so I think it was matching, like I really tried to match those tones with the way the colors of the photos, that coloring that they used, and even in the filming, like it had that same kind of tone. And so it was just trying to match all of that together. And then I think it really did come down to how beautiful the quality of those photos were as well. Like it was so beautiful to work with them, and having things like the candlelight and the even the staging light was really beautiful, and all of that stuff. And the way you can pair that with typefaces and fonts and working with those kind of beautiful elements, it made it really it almost felt natural. Like it really came together quite naturally. Like once we had those key elements, it was like pulling it together, just adding a few bits and pieces and using, technical design skills to make it fit. It really did come together quite naturally, and that was really beautiful.
I think there's a point to be made about choosing the particular photos that captured a sense of warmth, and it was really interesting because they're photos with no one in them. They're almost
like still life, still life.
They are.
And they're like there's an idea of chiaroscuro, which is the darks and lights, and that's found in paintings from older times, Renaissance or something, but yet they feel inviting. They don't feel isolating, or they don't feel eerie or spooky. And I think that's due to the warm light, and I think that's due to picking particular photos that make you feel like you could hop into the scene rather than making you feel like pulling away because it's too eerie or something. So I think that was a mix of beautiful eye for photography for the photographer, and then just using the ones that that really captured that in conjunction with the other pieces, the other designs, and other parts. So
yeah, that's great. Thank you for that insight. Now, we've already discussed at the start the fact that you guys are not just part of the Stairway family, you're also part of Stairway Music. So you guys are creative in a myriad of ways. Just wondering if you can tell our audience a bit about what you guys think is the difference between that musical creativity that you bring when you're singing or playing guitar in the band versus when you're working as double creative and it's a lot more visual and brand oriented. What is the difference between the kind of creative skills that you draw on and the way you work in those environments?
Really interesting. There's probably a few things in there. I'd say, first of all, that when approaching something creative, you approach it, if you approach it in the way that perhaps God intended and in the way that he's gifted you in that area. And that's not to say that we don't work really hard at the areas that God has given us a desire in our hearts to pursue. But that when we're almost fully ourselves, it's a place where we become the way that God's intended us to be, and he's created us to be creative. And so when we're playing music, we're being creative. When we're designing, we're being creative. But also if we're having creative thoughts and ideas, if we're doing business. So if I'm or Phoebe is doing business-related things and we're thinking creatively about how we run our business, that's also creative. And I think one of the things that our heart is for is that people in all the different areas of life that they find themselves in, if they're thinking, no, I'm not creative, but actually that they are. And that expression is the same creative expression that God's almost, he's made us this way, and he's created creativity in that way, and whatever the expression and the output of that is, it's the same heart to be creative and working from that place. So that might have been a super roundabout way of saying something really simple, but I think our heart's really for that. So I think I feel the same. Like, I think obviously when you're physically preparing for singing on a Sunday versus meeting with a client to show them branding concepts, it's a completely different space. However, I think, as Tom said, it's like something that I feel like it's something I've been on a journey on with the last few years, is realizing that my worship or my living a life that is an offering to God in a worship sense. It's like I can be singing on a Sunday in the team, or I can be doing my creative work, and it's still worship and it's still creativity, and it's definitely that both. And I have to stop myself from feeling like one is more important than the other. I mean, congregationally being together and worshiping is such an important thing to do, and I love it, and I absolutely I know that real focus time with God is so valuable and so important. But then knowing that that everything else I do creatively, and we do a lot of other creative stuff as well. Like, we both love photography, or I love cooking, or Tom loves to surf or to create things with his hands, or whatever it is. Like, there's a massive amount of things we love to do, but it's giving ourselves permission and that following that desire that God's put on our heart to know him through all these things. And that's so I hope that answers that question. In that there's a struggle to balance, especially with the music, I think. Probably both, to be honest, but I think it's obvious when you're on stage and you're supposed to be leading a team. You're supposed to be leading the congregation. You're supposed to be connecting with God on a really deep, intimate level. And technically, you want your voice or your guitar or your instrument of whatever you're playing to sound beautiful for the ears of those who are listening. So it is something that takes growing in. And each time I watch back, if I'm singing or co-leading or leading, or we just did an acoustic service together, we're kind of watching back and just remembering how beautiful the worship time was, and then also going, how did we go technically as well? Is there anything we can improve on? And just thinking, how could I have led the team better as well? Or could I have gone to that spontaneous place of worship where God was drawing me in, but I was too sort of focused on maybe the chord I was playing, so I didn't quite get there. And it's obvious when you're in the worship, in the music worship setting, to see that that array of different angles that you're kind of looking at it from. And it is the same, I think, in the work that we do, because we can be so self-critical but at some point you have to get to the point where it's okay that it's not perfect. Your harshest critic is probably yourself and the harsh words that you say against yourself. And I just think it's all a process as well. And I think we're in a space where we're constantly growing in all of that, because we want to connect with God on a really deep, meaningful heart level. But we also want to be good worship leaders and good designers and good with the things that God's put in our hands. So there's no solution there. It's just the fact that as creative people, that's the place that we exist within, and it's just the reality. And there's only a process of growing in that. I don't think it's a solution to find in the end.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of wisdom in that answer for everyone, I think. Thank you. We've got time for one more question, and this is more of a business-oriented question around the way you run Double Creative. So how do you go about working with people who want you to do a lot of your work for free or not wanting to pay you what you're worth?
That's really tough, especially if you're starting out. It can be really challenging.
I think knowing who your audience is and who you're working for is really important. So one thing that money does is it actually puts a value to what you do. And we know that in order to be generous in the work that we do, and in order to do it really well, if we're to give our whole self and our heart and put our heart into what we do, then actually being compensated financially to enable us to continue to do that more is really important part of the process, and is actually not only just fundamentally a good way to run a business, but also it puts value on you as a creative. And so knowing who your audience is and knowing who those people are that put the value on what you do enough to say, here's even what I've got in terms of a budget for what I've got, and you can say, I can do this or this for you within that budget. Or if you know who your people are, then going, if they say no because my quote is too high, then that's okay. They're possibly not the people for me. And going just around the corner, there might be that person that is willing to put the money on. And if you're tied up in a lot of free projects that are taking up your time, and you can't say yes to that person that is willing to put the value on it, then it puts you in a tricky situation to be able to do the work that you do. And to a year and a half later down the track, you might think, I'm still struggling. Why am I still struggling? But it's because I think putting value to what you do is an important part of actually connecting with the right kind of people that put the value on what you do.
And you have to value you first. it's so brutal and it's so hard to say no to work. It's And I know that it can be like, for me personally, like that's been a really hard journey. It being like, you know, I am worth that, and dealing with like imposter syndrome and all of that stuff. And we're young, like all of those things. But when we valued ourselves, and when I valued myself and gone, you know what, I know that I like my time is worth something. And if I'm gonna, you know, I could go out and get a supermarket job, or I could go out and get any other job. I could go back to my old job, whatever. It's like that time is worth being paid, and you'll get paid that. So why can't I get paid for the work that I want to do long term, and for the work that I know that I can offer people, and I need to do that in myself, and I need to value that in our business. And we're constantly going, okay, like how did that project go? All right, we've done more hours on that project than we budgeted for. We need to change the way we do our projects, and it's a constant change. So where we were 2 years ago is not where we are now, and it's just growing. And even if it is starting small, you just go, okay, cool, I'm making a little change this week and a little change next month, and you know, it does happen, and it is slow.
Because you won't not run into the trouble of actually spending twice as many hours that you've quoted for on a job. And that's the reality of it. Is I think there's a certain level of integrity within the business to say, okay, I've under quoted for this one, but I'm still going to see it through to the end and do a really, really amazing job. So that's the trade-off. It's if you do commit to something, then you put everything into it, because I think as a studio or as freelancers, the work that you put out is making the perception and the name for yourself that people hold in their minds. And it's really important that what you do is almost treated as an art form. So you put everything into it. And so we say all of this about quoting proper money for the work that you do. But I guess it comes down to when you do commit to a job, and if that is for less than what it's worth, then you kind of can still put everything into it.
Yeah. That's really great. I think it's a really unique challenge that creatives face, because, you know, when someone goes to an accountant for their services, nobody really questions what they're quoting as their hourly rate or their task rate. So it's definitely a unique challenge that creatives face, but an important one to face head on, particularly when you're starting out. Well, Tom and Phoebe from Double Creative, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to finish with a section we do each fortnight, which is 5 quick questions of your favourite things. So if you can both answer, that would be awesome. We'll have time for both of you. Okay, so can you tell us your favourite holiday that you've ever been on?
Oh,
New Zealand was our honeymoon, and we travelled around in a van in New Zealand, and just ate great food, and hung out in the mountains, and it was a really fun holiday.
I love that you said we, like it was our favourite holiday, because it was. It was
I don't need to ask.
What's your favourite TV show?
Oh, we just watched more Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I know it might be a little bit dated, but
it's just classic, you know.
We just did. I mean, we were blessed to receive a TV from random circumstances that happened over the last couple of days, and we're like, this is great, let's watch TV again. And we just clicked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and it reminded us of when we were back up in Mount Albert, because we're currently down on the Mornington Peninsula, and we just used to eat pasta and watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So
it's great. What's your favourite type of takeaway?
This can be different if you want. We don't have to have the same.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been putting my answers on.
I love Asian takeaway, whether that's dumplings, whether that's pho. Vietnamese. I really love Vietnamese or Thai food. Like Asian food, amazing takeaway. Glorious.
Was it takeaway or just any
takeaway?
Okay, takeaway. I'd probably have to say Vietnamese.
Yeah, nice. What is your favourite song to dance to on the dance floor?
Dance to on the dance floor. I did a cover one time of Destiny's Child. What's the song called?
Say My Name. Is it
Say My Name. And I don't think I'd like I don't know, what would you say? What's that hip dance that I would do?
I mean,
probably
guys,
put out a hip doing.
Next time Tom is on worship, you should watch him do the hip dance. It's a subtle.
I didn't even notice I do it. This is one of the things when you watch back on streaming, like that's one of the things I do, and I'm like, oh, that's awful. It's just one of the things. Hips shaking from left to right. So.
Yeah,
love it.
I wouldn't say it was my favorite, but it's.
I reckon Beyonce, like on the dance floor for sure.
Can't
like
be.
anything, you can't. You just can't. So I'd probably be a Beyonce song, I reckon.
Yeah, nice. And the last one is, what's your favorite thing about being home?
Oh,
that's such a nice.
That's so nice.
I would say spending time with Phoebe, but we constantly work from home, so. Nothing's changed here. Maybe the fact that we've moved down to the peninsula has changed.
Yep.
And currently working from home means we get to go for walks on the beach and go for runs on the beach because it's just down the road whenever we want to. So
I love being home, working from home, because I love being able to mix my life a little bit, so I could put my dinner on in the morning or in the slow cooker, and then maybe
I do enjoy that.
Make some baking at lunchtime, or we could go for a walk or whatever it is. I love the flexibility, and I think that's been nice about being home. I do miss people though. I miss seeing people and coffees outside. It's nice. I miss that.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you're watching at home, I've put Double Creative's website in the description for this video. So if you do have any branding or design needs, make sure you get in touch with Tom and Phoebe. It's been so great to have you all join us for another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, where we've got a bit of a different episode coming up, because it's going to be a collaborative episode, and we're going to have some guests who are not from Stairway. So it's going to be really different. So I really hope that you'll join us in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.